This is the O Octahedron, my puzzle for day 2 of this year's Puzzle Advent Calendar. The calendar is a yearly collaboration between many different YouTubers and puzzle creators to create a series of 24 daily videos, each one featuring a new puzzle that has never been seen before. This year we have an amazing set of participants and I'm very much looking forward to seeing everyone else's creations. Make sure to subscribe to Make Anything so you don't miss tomorrow's video, and check out the official playlist to see all of the amazing puzzles that have been shown so far. All of that will be down in the description. Anyway, back to the O Octahedron. It's called as such because it has a very similar aesthetic to my earlier O2 and O4 cubes. And, well, it's an octahedron. It may not be immediately obvious, but the O Octahedron is actually a shape modification of a regular 3x3 Rubik's Cube. The simple 3x3 cube has been changed in many ways since its release in the 1980s. Puzzle creators have changed the cube's stickers, its overall shape, and even the forms of the individual pieces. However, with all of these puzzles, it's still fairly obvious what it is at its core. A 3x3. That brings me to one of the aspects of the O Octahedron that I love most. It doesn't look anything like a 3x3. Even if you play with it for a bit but don't think too hard about its geometry, you still might not notice what it really is. I built this puzzle by extending a real 3x3 cube with 3D printed pieces. Puzzle design and creation has become much more accessible in the 2010s with the advent of inexpensive 3D printers and freely available design software. So the actual process of designing and 3D printing the pieces was fairly straightforward, although for a 3x3 mod it did present a few unique challenges. I started the design by creating the cage that would enclose the 3x3 cube. To do this, I created one of the 8 sections that would eventually be combined together to form the full cage, and I needed to cut a hole in the cage so that the 3x3 can turn unimpeded. So to do that, I modeled what the corner piece would look like, and you can see it's just a very simple corner extension with the circle on the outside. And this circle is what is shown in the end puzzle. I revolved this corner piece and removed the appropriate material from the inside part of the cage. This looked quite ugly, so I did have to clean this up a bit later. And then I simply copied this section several times in order to get the full cage. When that was all complete, I also designed the edge piece extension that would be glued onto the 3x3 edge. This piece doesn't really need to exist. It is mainly for stability and also to make it easier to turn the puzzle when it's in mid-turn. And then finally, there is the center cap, or at least half of it, because the center caps were actually split on this puzzle. Thankfully, all of these parts are relatively simple and easy to 3D print, so that wasn't much of a problem. The only hiccup I had with the 3D printing process was one of the cage parts I accidentally offset by like 1 degree or something ridiculous like that, which made its surface finish just horrible. But I decided to just clean it up and not waste material by reprinting the piece. At this point I finished printing all of the pieces for this puzzle, but before I get into how it all fits together, I want to explain one of the issues that I came across when designing it. This is a very basic 3x3 extension mod, the Fused Illusion. When I say very basic, what I mean by that is every piece of the 3x3 has only one other piece attached to it. That means that every corner has one extension, every center has one extension, and every edge has one extension. And those extensions don't interact in any other interesting ways. So this is just a straight extension mod. Every single piece has one extension. So for example, this is a corner, this is a center, this is an edge. This is a different edge. However, even though the O Octahedron is a 3x3 extension mod, this actual cage on the outside isn't any kind of 3x3 piece. You could technically equate it to the core, but there's just no way to physically connect this cage to the core of the puzzle because, as you can pretty much guess, the core is all the way on the inside, and I'm not going to do something ridiculous like drill a hole in the center cap to get to the core. So, what does that mean for us? That means that we can't just make this a straight extension mod with the centers extending to the cage and just having that be the connection. Because if I did that and then I connected all of the centers up, the puzzle just wouldn't be able to make any turns whatsoever. So instead, what I had to do is design a mechanism that allows this cage to kind of be a second core for the puzzle, which essentially just means that you see this is the center extension here. This will be glued onto the center cap, and if I hold that in place, this cage can rotate around it. And this is essentially the goal. It just uses a very simple dovetail mechanism, which was printed as part of the cage, and then this extension is just glued onto it's glued together onto the dovetail. So you can see here what this looks like in practice. Essentially, when I make a 3x3 turn, this center extension turns with it, but this cage doesn't get affected at all. In fact, the only purpose of this connection is to prevent this 3x3 from flopping around within the cage. So for that, honestly, I'd say this works pretty well. If you look at this, the turning is smooth. It's not really catching at all. And overall, I consider that part of the design a success, which is good because that was kind of one of the aspects of this design I was least sure about. The other thing I can show you is this is what essentially the puzzle will look like. Just two halves of this. So you'll be able to go in and turn the layers as such. Anyway, the two pieces of the cage fit together like this, or like this actually would be better. So I'm going to have to super glue them in. And I'm also going to super glue the final center cap to this cage. So let's go ahead and do that. And now, if I've done everything correctly, all I need to do is gently press this all together, as such. And now the super glue should be more than enough to just keep the two halves of the cage together, and overall the puzzle will be quite stable. So after the super glue dries, all I really have left to do is sticker this up, and then let's take it outside and see how it is. Now that the O Octahedron is fully stickered, I think it really looks quite nice. You may be wondering about the small cuts in the stickers on each side. Those serve the purpose of giving the circles an orientation. If the solve consisted only of matching the circles with their faces, it would be trivial to solve and not really interesting. So I added the cuts, thinking they would help preserve the puzzle's overall aesthetic. Looking at it now though, it doesn't look perfect, and if I were to re-sticker the octahedron, I'd try to find another way of giving the circles an orientation. The puzzle turns quite well overall, which makes sense considering that it is built from a good turning miniature 3x3. However, the cage prevents the pieces from corner cutting a lot, but that's not much of a problem given that aligning the layers isn't really that difficult. The octahedron also suffers from the same problem as the original version of the O2 cube, which is that some of the stickers should really be cut back a bit, as in its current state they occasionally catch on pieces in mid-turn. Thankfully, this doesn't really impede the puzzle's usability. The main appeal of the O Octahedron to me is the way it looks. Something about the aesthetic of just a circle, not connected to anything else, makes it feel like the puzzle shouldn't be able to turn, and yet it can. I haven't solved it yet, but I don't think it will be very difficult, even with the circles needing to be oriented correctly. As with the original O2 cube, this is a nice puzzle to look at when it's on a shelf or just on display, but it really isn't much of a challenge for experienced solvers, although there certainly is a place for just easy puzzles that you can solve intuitively in a few minutes. That all said, let's scramble the puzzle up and then solve it. Alright, so let's take a look at how the O Octahedron is to solve. I'm just going to be solving this puzzle layer by layer because that's the simplest way and there's really no reason to overcomplicate it. And what I mean by that is, this is the first layer, these 4 pieces, and then this is the last layer. And obviously we don't do anything with the middle layer because none of the edges have any stickers on them. So let's go ahead and solve the first layer. Alright, and the first layer of the O Octahedron is complete. You can see that the cyan, blue, yellow, and orange pieces are all in, and they also match the cuts. And this meant that I did have to turn some of these circles around before they actually fit in. So now it's time to do the last layer. Okay, so the last layer is almost done. You can see that all of the circles are in their correct spots, but the red and green ones are not oriented correctly. So I have to turn the green center clockwise and the red center counterclockwise. Alright, and with the last turn, the O Octahedron is complete. It's honestly not that easy to solve, just intuitively. I found that I really did have to use 3x3 algorithms on it, so it's not like a Dino Cube where you can just pick it up and solve it without really knowing anything about the puzzle. That being said, it's really not that hard of a solve, so I think it's at a good beginner level difficulty, which is not bad. It also turns reasonably well, although as you saw, sometimes the sticker did catch a little bit, and sometimes it was a bit hard to turn because, again, this puzzle doesn't really corner cut all that well. Thank you all very much for watching. As I said earlier, this is part of the Puzzle Advent Calendar. Make sure you're subscribed to Make Anything so you don't miss tomorrow's video. Links in the description. And check out all of the amazing other puzzles that have been made as a part of this collaboration. Thank you all very much for watching, and have a good day.